If you like this content, please subscribe and tell your friends. If you're a fan of Star Trek, make a comment. It makes a difference. With that being said, thank you all for watching Trek Wars. So, I don't know about you, but I've always wondered, are there any of the races out there, are they really actually strong enough to go against our boys, the Federation, on a one-on-one? Now, I've thought about this, and I have some opinions, and I want to share them with you guys. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down some of these major powers out there, and then present a scenario to you guys and why I think that they cannot or can either defeat the Federation or damage the Federation enough that they would be a serious threat. Now, with that being said, we got to pick a time frame, and I don't want to do it during the Dominion War because that makes the Federation way too vulnerable. So what I want to do is I want to have the scenario taking place right before the Dominion War breaks out, when the Federation has built up its fleet. It's preparing for the war with the Dominion, but in our magical world, the Dominion never attack. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, and so we will start with some of the lesser known races and then move our way up, and we will go with the Gorn first. Now, when we look at the Gorn Empire, it is itty bitty. It is super small and teeny weeny. Can the Gorn do anything though? Okay, so taking a look at the Gorn, we can see that their empire is very small, but just because they're a small empire doesn't mean that they're not capable of doing anything. Now, how advanced is the Gorn? Well, the Gorn has always been seen to be the same technological advancement as Starfleet. Their ships are similar in size, same in power, and they've been able to hold their own against the Klingon Empire and the Romulans in the past. So we know the Gorn have a very powerful military, but the problem is, in my opinion, is I don't think it's powerful enough to go toe-to-toe with the Federation. Now, are their ships equivalent to the Federation? Their ships are probably stronger than most Federation starships, but the problem is they don't have the numbers to defend against Federation numbers. Now, the Gorn do have very advanced starships, and they do have a modern military. That military is consisting of destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. So I would say that the Gorn are not capable of doing much of anything to the Federation because of the Federation's overwhelming numbers. The Gorn have the technology and they have powerful ships, but they don't have the numbers. Now, I will second this thought because we do know that shortly after the Dominion War, the Gorn is defeated by the Klingons. Now, we know the Klingons had been weakened because of the Dominion War, and they still couldn't hold up, or the Gorn still lost to a relatively broken down Klingon Empire. So if the Klingon Empire in the state after the Dominion War, after rebuilding its forces, is able to defeat the Gorn, and the Gorn, not only could they not defeat the Klingons, they had to call in the Nausicaans for support. They ended up losing this battle to the Klingons. So I would say, do they have a chance to do anything to the Federation? The answer is absolutely not. All right, so the next race that we're going to take a look is Tholians. Could the Tholians do anything to the Federation? So first thing we want to look at is how large is Tholians? How large is their space? And we look at them compared to the Gorn. They're almost 4 times the size of the Gorn. So they're a much bigger empire, but yet compared to the Federation, they're still quite small. The Tholian Empire is very dangerous. They have a massive military and they're technologically very advanced. So I will give a couple of examples on why I think that they're actually going to pose a huge threat to the Federation. Even though their empire is really small, their vessels hit way outside their weight limits. And I want to show you a couple examples. Okay, so the first example is Enterprise. As you can see, there is a large Vulcan cruiser. Now, Vulcan cruisers during the time period of Enterprise are basically dreadnoughts. They were the most powerful ships out there, and they outclassed everything. They were stronger than Klingons, they're stronger than Romulans, they're stronger than Gorn. Like, there wasn't anyone out there that could take on the Vulcans on a one-on-one basis, right? But these little teeny Tholian vessels, 4 of them, were able to defeat one of these capital class ships by using their webs. Now, another thing is they have some kind of energy dampening weapon. And another thing to point out is they're involved in the temporal war. So we know that they're involved in the temporal war. So that there's a couple things that think about that when we look at that. That means that they're getting information from other dimensions, other time periods, with obviously when they should not be getting that information. So that gives them a tactical edge because of obviously they're involved in that conflict. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about their webbing technology and how that is used because that's a huge weapon that they use, and it explains a lot of their tactics. So when what they do is they have to surround an enemy vessel, and when they surround the enemy vessel, they create this web, and you can shoot at the web, and the web absorbs and uses the energy to strengthen the web, but yet they can fire into the web at you. So this is how, let's say, a couple of destroyers are able to destroy a cruiser, or heavy cruiser, or even a dreadnought, is by using this webbing technology, which gives them a huge advantages, especially in small scale engagements. Now, the next factor I want to talk about is the fleet size. So, Tholians actually have a relatively large military for an empire of their size. And their ships overall are pretty tough, but they're not the toughest. So when it comes to like a technological like comparison, they are either equal to or above most Federation starships. And their ships can range from very small to extremely massive. Now, the main reason that I think that they could go toe to toe with the Federation, they have the technology, they have numbers, they do have a large military, but that large military isn't their main strength. What the Tholians do is they like territory, they're obsessed with temporal anomalies, and they have actually perfected technology to enter into other dimensions. And so what they have done is, because they are somewhat of a hive mind, they actually are pulling resources and ships from other temporal dimensions. So the mirror universe and things of that nature, where they're like the third most powerful empire, the Tholians are actually getting reinforced by other Tholians from other dimensions. So you're not just going to be fighting them on your dimension, you're going to be fighting them from other dimensions supporting them. So they have a lot of really advanced technology when it comes to obviously interdimensional portals and things of that nature, and that's why they locate and go for territories. They don't care about space exploration. All they really care about is their temporal technology. All right, so the real answer is, can the Tholians take on the Federation? And the answer, surprisingly, is absolutely yes. Not only can they take on the Federation, they have the opportunity to win because of their unique skills and traits. Seeing as they've actually defeated the Federation in different dimensions, the answer is obviously yes. All right, so the next empire that we're going to look at, can they take on the Federation, is going to be the Klingon Empire. All right, so the next empire we're going to look at is the Klingon Empire. It is the second largest empire, and yet it boasts the largest military. Now, this empire has fought many of the other races and come to many stalemates throughout its history, but the question is can they defeat the Federation? And remember our time zone, this is taking place before the Dominion War. And the answer is absolutely not. And I want to give you some examples of why I think that this is not the case and why the Klingon Empire would not be capable of defeating the Federation. Now, the first thing I want to do is, for those of you who are going to point out, obviously, yesterday's Tomorrow episode where the Federation lost to the Klingon Empire. There's some information about that I want to make relevant to the audience. Number one, Yes, it is a different timeline, and they did lose. But there's something we should think about. Think about the events that took place with the House of Duras being supported by the Romulan Star Empire. If the Federation was never aligned with the Klingon Empire, House Duras would have taken the throne. House Duras was being supported by the Romulan Star Empire. So that means that when the Klingon Empire was fighting the Federation, they had Romulan support. And that's something that's not mentioned, but that's something you would know if you know the history. And so that's a major factor into yesterday's tomorrow. So can the Klingon Empire defeat the Federation? They can if they have Romulan support. Do they have Romulan support in the current timeline? The answer is no. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the numbers. So I told you that it's a 3-1, right, against the Federation. So the Klingon Empire has an army that's almost 2 or 3 times larger than the Federation's. But let's look at the quality of the starships. So we know on a one-on-one, obviously, Federation battleships are far superior than Klingon battleships. So the Klingons have to use numbers to win. So we see that in yesterday's tomorrow, but how would that work during the pre-battles of the Dominion War? So let's just create a hypothetical. Could 3 Klingon Katangas take on a steam runner? The answer is no. A steam runner has way more shielding, has way more armor, and its weapons are superior than the Katanga. The Klingon Empire consists mostly of old, aged ships, and it's very outdated. So the K-Vort is old. The Bird of Prey is old. The Katanga is old. They do have some more modern ships like the D9, but when you compare that to Federation starships, they're a whole caliber behind. So the Klingon Empire does have the numbers, but for an example, let's just look at the Bird of Prey. It's the main warship of the Klingon Empire. Its shielding is 1/4 that of a Galaxy class. Yes, Klingon ships do have good firepower, but almost all of them are glass cannons. And when I say a glass cannon, yes, they can do significant damage. Their weaponry is at par with the Federation. Their shielding isn't. Their hull strength is not. A Bird of Prey is seen to be able to take a relatively small amount of firepower before it's destroyed. We have seen the Galaxy-class starship take over 50 shots from Klingon battlecruiser, which would be the K-Vort. Now, in the Prime Universe, it's a light cruiser, but my point is that the Klingon Empire's military sucks. It just sucks. The Federation ships typically have 360-degree firing arcs, so yeah, you could decloak, get up close, and attack them, but they're still going to blow the shit out of you. The Klingon Empire really sucks. I mean, I don't really know how else to say this. Now, like I said, most Klingon ships are pretty old and pretty aged, and they're not particularly that powerful. Now, there is one ship that they have that is very powerful, has over 20 disruptors, 4 torpedo launchers, and is really hard to take down. And that is the Vorcha-class cruiser. Now, here's the other thing, though. The Federation helped design this. Your best weapon was designed by your enemy, so the Klingons know how the Vorcha-class cruiser works, and guess what? So does the Federation. So any weaknesses, anything, they're going to be able to They're going to be able to figure this out. They're going to be able to figure something around this because they know the ship. So it won't take the Federation very long before they figure out some kind of weakness with the Vorcha-class cruiser because they helped design it. Now, there is another factor that you should be throwing into this, and that's the Gorn. So the Gorn are right underneath on the other side of Klingon space. If the Klingon Empire and the Federation go to war, there is a high likelihood in our time zone that the Gorn will support the Federation. Now, does the Gorn have a military capable of overthrowing the Klingon Empire? No, but they do have an advanced fleet, and they do have large ships, and it would be hard for the Klingon Empire to take on the Gorn and the Federation at the same time. Matter of fact, they don't have enough ships for that. So If that scenario was to take place, the Klingon Empire would have its hands full dealing with the Federation, and it would be overwhelmed if the Gorn were helping them as well. And that means that the Federation could easily get into Klingon space unattested and start wiping out structures, colonies, whatever they needed to do. Now, the TNG Klingon Empire is stagnant in technology. They are using old ships. They have a lot of internal fighting. There's just so many things going wrong with the Klingons that I don't think that they have the necessary ships, power, or numbers to overwhelm the Federation. And then more importantly than that, I really feel that Klingons in this time period are tactically less sound than in Captain Kirk's era. They seem to do a lot of stupid things when we see Gowron and the things that he was doing, and we see the way the Council was behaving. And when they fought with the Dominion, it's basically they have no real strategy anymore. I don't think the Klingon Empire is an effective empire during this time period, and the Federation, I think personally, would shit stomp the Klingons. Now, next is the third largest empire, which is the Romulan Star Empire. The Romulan Star Empire is a technologically advanced race which is at par with the Federation. Now, can the Romulan Star Empire defeat the Federation? That's a good question. So, the Romulan Star Empire is very different than the Klingon Empire. Their fleet is much smaller, but it's way more advanced. Now, they specialize in espionage and not actual combat. So the Romulans are a far different kind of adversary than the Klingons. So the Romulan and Federation technology, like I said, is very similar. Their main warship is the Warbird. Can do anything basically the Galaxy class can do, but can do it slightly better. It's got more firepower. It's got more armor. The only real difference between the Federation and the Romulan technology is that the Romulans do have the singularity device, which gives them an edge, means that they don't have to be reliant on dilithium. The Federation is. Now, where I would say the Federation has a large advantage over the Romulan Star Empire is in sheer ships and numbers. Now, the Romulan Warbird is very advanced and is at the same caliber as a Galaxy-class starship. But during this time period, the Federation has more advanced ships than the Galaxy-class. Right before the Dominion War, you have the Akira, you have the Sovereign, and the Romulans have no counter for ships of that caliber. Now, the next reason why I would say that the Romulan Star Empire would struggle against Federation forces is yes, a Romulan warbird on a 1-on-1 will defeat most Federation starships except for the upper tier classes. But Romulans are very reliant on cloaking devices because they have very few numbers and their fleets are very limited. Federation starships are particularly good at identifying cloaked vessels. This advantage will become more of a handicap to the Romulans if there is a full-blown war against the Federation. So with that being said, can the Romulans hold their own against the Federation? Their answer is yes, but on a large scale, the Romulan ships are going to be far less effective than the Federation ships in large engagements. So can the Romulan Star Empire defeat the Federation? From a military standpoint, the answer is no. Federation ships are smaller but similar in power to the huge giant behemoths of the Warbird, and more modern Federation starships are even more advanced than the Warbird itself. Now, what does the Romulan Star Empire bring to the table? Tactics, skills, and most importantly, the unknown factor. The Federation knows very little about the Romulan technology, and the Romulans know a lot about Federation technology. They've been watching the Federation. They have a really powerful spy network that is done through the Tal Shiar. So what that means is we've seen episodes where they were about to annex Vulcan. They will pull these kind of stunts against the Federation. If they really, really wanted to, they could do things like this and they could weaken the Federation, and they would use the Federation's own policies and tactics against them. The Romulans are extremely manipulative, very smart, and very sneaky, and they would damage the Federation before the Federation even realized what was going on. The Romulans are always behind things, they're behind the scenes, and they could bring down the Federation, but they would never be able to do it through military might. They would do it through espionage and trickery, and they would bleed the Federation through the long haul. That's how the Romulans fight, and that is their advantage. Next on our list is a very secretive race, and that would be the Breen. So the Breen are coming from a little tiny empire. It's just a little dot. Okay, so my opinion to break down the Breen, to best explain them is they are very unknown, very aggressive, very good warriors, but their technology level, I would say, is more of a mid-peer starship. Now, there are modern ships, but they're not super high quality. The Bree fleet consists of almost all cruisers, and they're mid-sized cruisers with mid-level firepower, mid-level shielding, mid-level armor. What the Bree do have is an energy dampening weapon that makes them very dangerous. So, my opinion, can the Bree defeat the Federation? The answer is no way. They don't have enough ships. Even with the energy dampening weapon, the amount of losses the Federation would have with the first engagements of the Bree would react basically the same. They would have heavy losses, but the Federation would adapt to this technology, and after they adapted to the technology, they would slaughter the Bree. The Bree don't have the numbers. They have a moderately large fleet, but it's nothing compared to the Federation, and they would be overwhelmed. Now, Bree ships are fast, they're maneuverable, they're good ships, and they're good fighting ships, but when it comes to the Federation, their caliber is far below Federation standards. They can't compete with the Akiras, Norway's, Defiance, Steamrunners. Any of those ships, on a one-on-one basis, would obliterate the Bree. The Bree's technology level is, I would say it's probably somewhere around the same as your Lost Era starships. So I would say something like the Freedom class or maybe New Orleans. I think their technological level would be similar to those Federation starships. So I would estimate, in my opinion, that they're about 20 or 30 years behind Starfleet in technology. So in the beginning stages of a battle with the Bree, they would be very, very dangerous, and they would be very devastating to Federation forces, but the Federation would adapt to the Bree energy weapon. After the Bree energy weapon is adapted to, I don't really think the Bree would have much of a chance against the Federation. Now, Bree home space would be very hard to take. We know the Klingon Empire tried and failed. The ships completely got decimated, a whole fleet. So we know that their space is extremely well defended. So can the Federation overwhelm those defenses? The answer is yes, but it would be at such a high level of cost, I don't think the Federation would ever do that. Now, the major reason that they're going to fail is obviously the ship qualities. Like, even the Bree battleship isn't really that large, and it's not that much of a difference than a Bree cruiser. So their ships are not particularly that great, and they're not that large, and they don't really have any true, actual good capital class starships. The only thing they have, they're like, what we refer to as a one-trick pony, is the Bree energy weapon, and without that, they're pretty much useless. Now, the Bree do have cloaking technology, but it's not as advanced as the Romulans. It's probably equivalent to maybe the Klingons' cloaking technology, but it might even be less advanced than that. Overall, the Bree are not that advanced. Now, they're a very secretive culture. They keep to themselves, and that's probably why they're not as advanced as some of the other races. Now, what does the Bree have going for it? Energy dampening weapon. They're very, very, very brave and very good warriors. But that's not enough. They don't have the numbers. So can they defeat the Federation? There's no circumstance where I see them being capable of doing this at all. So next on our list is the Cardassians. Now, the Cardassians have a huge sector of space, pretty much almost at the same size as the Romulan Star Empire. And can they defeat the Federation? Let's talk about it. So we'll take a look at the Cardassian Union. So the Cardassian Union is technologically the least powerful of the great powers. Their ships are less efficient than their counterparts. Their military is rather large, and they do have a functioning spy network that is the Obsidian Order. Now, my opinion, the Obsidian Order are rejects of the Tal Shiar. Now, the reason why I say that their spy network is not as efficient as the Romulans is simply this. We see the Romulans pull things up. We see the Cardassians boast about their connections and they can do this and they can do that, but they never really ever actually do anything. Like one of the best things that we ever see the Obsidian Order do is they learned about runabouts, control mechanisms, and that surprised Captain Sisko. But I mean, come on, it's a runabout. Like, there are tens of thousands of these ships, like Federation officers, and everyone sees these things, and it's not even like the fact that you're even boasting about that shows how pathetic you really are. So, the Cardassians, we'll talk about Cardassian ships next. So Cardassian ships are about equivalent to an Excelsior class. Their weapon, firepower, shielding is in that ballpark for the most part. They don't really have any brand new ships except for the Kelton class, which has got Galaxy class shielding, but it's still similar size. They don't really have any advanced starship designs that are really worth anything. So from a military standpoint, they can never take on the Federation because they don't have the quality or technology. Now, another thing about the ships that the Cardassians have that is a huge issue is the fact that they're not really good at targeting small ships. So it's really apparent that their targeting systems are nowhere as effective as Federation ships. They have a really hard time against runabouts and shuttlecrafts and being. I mean, they had issues with the Maquis. The Maquis are basically civilians. There's nothing really impressive about the Maquis whatsoever, and the Maquis constantly were defeating Cardassian ships, tricking the Cardassians. It just goes to show that the Cardassians have such like high regards for themselves and they feel themselves to be superior than everyone else, and everyone else is inadequate compared to them. But the reality, they live in like a false reality. The Cardassian Union is basically woke. They're like the Star Trek woke race. Like, if you were going to think of a race that thinks they're better than everyone else and they're right about everything and then is wrong about everything and is constantly making mistakes and getting stomped on, they're like the woke race of Star Trek. Now, they do have the Obsidian Order, and the Obsidian Order could do some damage to Starfleet. But once Starfleet is looking for them and knows that they're out there, it's way easier to identify an Obsidian Order member than the Tal Shiar. The Obsidian Order is nowhere as efficient as the Tal Shiar. Now, in my opinion, there is a technology they do have that does give them an edge in some ways, and that would be their hull integrity. So their ships are very well armed, and they do appear to be able to take a significant amount of damage once their shields are down. So if the Cardassians do get a modern fleet with modern shields and modern weapons, and they already have really advanced hull strength and hull technology, they could be dangerous. But we're talking about the Cardassians of the TNG era, and the answer is no. They are not worth a shit. So my final threat analysis of the Cardassians is through their arrogance, through their attempts for espionage, they think that they are right, and they think they're right all the time. They think everybody should believe the way they do, and everyone should do everything the way they do. They think they're better than everyone, and they're basically the woke villains of Star Trek. If I was to try to explain what the Cardassians are, they're like woke culture taking over. That's my opinion of what the Cardassians are. The Cardassians are not as smart as they think they are. They're not technologically advanced as they think they are. They basically live in a world of delusion, and the only way they function is by forcing that delusion on the population. They are literally the embodiment of woke culture. And this is what woke culture could do to a society. And the Cardassians are the perfect example of woke culture taking over and what you could be like in the stagnation from basically this race of leaders that are basically mentally retarded. So I'll give you another example of why I think that they are stupid. So, for example, the Cardassians go to war with the Klingon Empire. The Klingon Empire basically conquers half of their territory within a few months. The Dominion come in there and save them. The Dominion saved them. And what is their response to the Dominion saving them? Well, we'll deal with the Federation, and then after the Federation's dealt with, then we'll deal with the Dominion. They were already going to stab their allies in the back when they haven't even got up yet. This is how stupid the Cardassians are, and this is the mentality that they have, and this is why I really like the Cardassians. They are written, they're a cool race, but they are so arrogant and so stupid. The reason they're written this way is to show you the absolute arrogance that some countries have and some leaders have, and how they can destroy their entire empire just because of pure ignorance. So there are a lot of other races out there we could have talked about. The Ferengi, the Borg, the Q, but some of them I just didn't really feel were that necessary. I don't think the Ferengi could possibly be a threat to the Federation. We know the Q would dominate them, and we also know the Borg, if they wanted to, they could beat the Federation, no problem at all. They sent 3 cubes, it would all have been over. So that's why I didn't mention those races. Are there any actual galactic powers out there that I didn't mention that should have been on this list that could possibly potentially be dangerous or even beat the Federation? If you have an opinion, I would like to know what it is, what the race is, and why you think that. And then I will research them. And with that being said, engage. If you like this content, please subscribe and tell your friends. If you're a fan of Star Trek, make a comment. It makes a difference. With that being said, thank you all for watching Trek Wars.